Ludacris asked, what is your fantasy? What is your fantasy? Troy Aikman apparently leaving Fox, this is huge, and heading to ESPN for some football.
Okay, and we're not talking about Jane Fonda and Sally Field. We're talking about broadcasting fantasies.
Because that's your fantasy.
I mean, I thought about it today.
Paul thought that he didn't know the song. And I was like, you know this song. And then but here's the thing.
You told me the name of the song, though. You didn't sing it for me.
I said, what's your fantasy? So Paul's like, well, sing it and I'll know it. So I'm in the lobby like, I want to lick you from your head to your toes.
You do? HR.
Yeah. Hello. All right. Troy Aikman allegedly heading to ESPN. Now, here's why this is surprising, Paul. Mm-hmm. Because it was rumored that he was leaving Fox, but it was almost a sure thing that it was Amazon. Because Al Michaels, who is leaving NBC as Mike Tirico moves into the head spot there, Al Michaels is leaving NBC and is almost certainly heading to Amazon. And Al Michaels has been very vocal. The person he wants as his color commentator is Troy Aikman. So it was widely thought that it would be Al Michaels and Troy Aikman on Amazon. Now we're hearing that instead, Louis Riddick is getting the boot. I'm not saying Steve Levy will, but it seems like there's a bigger move coming because
they want to have a big name in that booth. And they feel like that reason that people aren't watching it is because the broadcast team hasn't been good. And you've seen, I mean, they've been playing musical chairs with it for a couple of years now.
And the chemistry among the guys and the women has just not been good. Susie Colbert rocks it out on the pregame show, but
Joe Tessitore was obsessed with random special team stats. Jason Witten was a robot, and Booger McFarland, who I like, I just think not someone that should be doing color commentary. I think that he is at his best when he's doing a talk show. I think he's when he's loose and he's Booger. Booger's awesome. I remember growing up listening to Booger McFarland on the radio in Tampa Bay. You know, when I was in high school, he would be on the radio. He was awesome. I always loved it. And now that he's on ESPN and he's ESPNized, it's just not the same.
The bottom line is that Tony Romo changed the game because Troy Aikman is looking
until he started half-assing it.
Possibly $180 million over the span of like a decade. So it's going to be crazy. This leaves a couple of questions.
Okay.
Obviously, there's going to be that number one color commentator because for years it's been Buck, Aikman, and Aaron Andrews. They could do a couple of things. They could move Greg Olson, who is now on the number 2 team, right, as of now with Kevin Burkhardt and Pam Oliver. They could move Greg Olson from the number 2 team to the number 1 team.
I think they'll do
really, really like him. Now, he's only been in that number 2 slot for a year,
he's great,
but he's really good.
He was fun to cover in Seattle, too, for the one year he was up there.
Oh, that's right. He was there.
He's got, I mean, he is, if you've watched him out there, he's just naturally, I think, conversational. And a lot of these guys aren't, and they feel weird doing it, and they feel like they have to speak in a different voice, or they just don't say anything. Like Drew Brees is awful in this role. And look, I'm not acting like this is an easy job. It is difficult to move from a playing field where you got teammates and you got relationships to all of a sudden be in this spot where you're expected to be critical. But I think Greg Olson would be great in that spot. And if it's Greg Olson and Joe Buck, I mean, I'm not going to lie. A lot of people hate on Joe Buck. I think Joe Buck is fantastic at what he does.
I think he's great.
And I think Buck and Aikman, that's been the best duo in terms of NFL play-by-play for a while. Yes, I would even say so over Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth, because Collinsworth has gotten a little bit too positive about everybody these days.
Yeah,
here's a guy. You know,
here's a guy. So my question is, what's your fantasy NFL announcer booth?
Okay,
you can pick one play-by-play.
Okay,
one color commentator and one sideline reporter. Now, the other thing is that you can think outside of the box. So you can say Pat McAfee or Sean Payton or Tom Brady, somebody that isn't currently broadcasting but is thought to, we know that Sean Payton's heading to a broadcast. We know that Tom Brady could if he wanted to. And we know that Pat McAfee, there were hundreds of thousands of people on Twitter rallying for him to get this job years ago. What is your fantasy football NFL booth?
Okay, so there's no swaying me on this. Kevin Harlan is the best play-by-play voice alive. If you have heard him do Monday Night Football on the radio, this is a guy who can turn a drunk fan running onto the field into something hilariously entertaining.
The guy is drunk.
Yes, Kevin Harlan is number 1 in my book. I think Harlan's your play-by-play guy. The real question is what you do in color commentary. So I thought about this in a variety of different fashions. I mean, if I want to just have a high energy, everyone seems like they're on cocaine kind of broadcast, which I kind of like because a lot of people seem to think that I'm like that when I'm on the radio.
You are very energetic, but we love it.
Right. Stephen A. Smith, as a color commentator would be hysterical. Because Stephen A. Smith is not an ex-player, but Stephen A. Smith would be, I think, the perfect, like, just calling it how he sees it kind of color commentator. Now, you need to have an ex-player that does it. Who is someone, though, that really does it like that? Well, here's my answer for if I'm being serious. Richard Sherman. And I know that Richard Sherman, I wanted this to happen with Richard Sherman when I was up in Seattle, and he had his incident this past, over the past year where, you know, he got drunk and he went to the
he was angry.
parents' house of his wife, and it was pretty rough to watch, and I thought that he might have killed his chances there. But Richard Sherman is opinionated. Richard Sherman is extremely intelligent, and Richard Sherman is not afraid to dump on people. So I think that your play-by-play guy is Harlan. Your color commentary guy is Richard Sherman. And then afterwards, this is where it gets tricky. I think for the most part that sideline interviews generally are, I feel like the sideline reporters just feels uncomfortable.
They're meh.
Right. So I want to have someone who's just a complete goofball. And this is, I don't know how many people know who this person is, but he's someone that does stuff over at Barstool Sports. His name's Caleb Presley.
Okay.
So Caleb Presley does these interviews where essentially he is just, you kind of have to watch it to understand it, but he is acting like hamming up the worst tendencies of sideline reporters when he does it. And I would just encourage you to check him out because I can't really do a good job of explaining it. But if I'm going to have a sideline reporter, I want it to be someone who is just weird and makes these people as they're going off the field be like, what
like
just happened to me?
uncomfortable.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Yeah, instead of, Coach, how do you feel?
Right.
What was going through your mind
Exactly.
that last play? One of the answers we get on Twitter, hologram Pat Summerall and John Madden with O.J. Simpson on the sideline.
O.J. Simpson on the sideline.
That's dark.
Can't let him on the sideline.
But it would be extremely entertaining. We've
Thanks,
gotten a
John.
couple of Michelle Tafoyas, which awkward. But yeah, I mean, Melanie Collins, sideline reporter, Al Michaels, play-by-play, Tony Romo, or Eli Manning and Marshawn Lynch. See, Eli's very vanilla. Marshawn would add that they actually might go well together because they complement each other so well.
Marshawn actually would be just as effective as Richard Sherman. And I like that Marshawn all of a sudden is finally being a little bit open. And in my time up in Seattle, hearing all the Marshawn Lynch stories, that guy, there's no one that is loved more in Seattle than Marshawn Lynch is. The guy's hilarious.
He's another one who's intelligent.
But he's also just so different. The problem would be, and this is what the network executives have to think of, because I don't have a problem with it, but the problem would be this guy would take you down some real rabbit holes, and you're going to get fined at least 5 times a game because he is going to swear. And I don't know if the NFL would ever sign off on something like this, but I would really love to see a completely unfiltered broadcast. And with Marshawn Lynch, I mean, that would be the perfect person to have as the guy riding shotgun with whoever would be the one steering the ship. The question is, who do you want steering the ship? We got a couple of people suggesting Gus Johnson. Gus Johnson's basketball, you know.
Yeah, that's true. This is NFL.
And while I would love to hear, just like this one texter suggests, I want Gus Johnson to do color for my next time in Sexy Time.
Oh God, what would that even sound like?
He's at the finish line. Oh! He went early. Yeah, that would be a bit of a bummer, I think, if you have Gus Johnson on the call. I feel like you would only disappoint him.